So I have a 2004 JCB 212S or 2CX in Europe. I'm going to go over the stabilizer rebuild that I did. And the reason why you need to rebuild these is there's wear pads. You can see the new ones in here. There's one there, one over there, and one there, and one on the other side. So 4 at the top, as well as there's 4 at the bottom, 2 internal, and these 2 adjustable ones here, and then there's 2 internal ones that go on the outer leg, one like this and one like that. And what happens is if you don't adjust these, or these other ones wear too much, the inner leg can move around a lot, and what will happen is the hydraulic ram will then basically bend because the leg isn't held, and the hydraulic cylinder will start to leak because you bent your cylinder, and that's what happened to me. So anyway, I'll just cover a few things that I did not cover in my other videos. So the first thing you have to do is you lower the leg down slightly, and then there'll be a 10 millimeter by 90 millimeter bolt that holds the lower pin on, that holds the foot to the leg. So the first thing to do is remove this bolt, and then the next thing is to remove the pin that holds this on, and that's what I'll cover in the next part of the video. After you do that, you remove the top pin, undo the hydraulic lines, and then lift the whole assembly up through the outer leg. Just removing the rear stabilizer rams, just rebuilding the whole stabilizer system here. Got the wear pads out. They were really rusted in there. It took lots of heat and a big 8-foot breaker bar to get them to come out. And now I'm about to push this lower pin through so that you can get the foot pad off, because the ram has to lift out through the top. That's the only way it can come out. I've got my 20-ton bench mount shop press here stuck underneath it, jerry rigged up, and so I'm just about to crank down the pressure here and see if we can get that pin to come out. If not, I'll have to apply some heat while pushing on it with the press. $15 tons. There it is. It's out.
Keep going?
Yeah. Try the big bar. No?
Ah!
So after a lot of heat and a lot of hammering, the pin's finally out of this top one. Had this piece of tin in there to help deflect some of the heat away from the lines. I did leave them connected. I did start off with them disconnected, and there was just too much fluid dripping out every time you hit it with the hammer. Some would squirt out and then potentially catch on fire. So it's best to leave those hooked up while you pound out the pins. Here it is here. And it was a two-person job, one to hold the torch and one to hammer. Otherwise, I tried it by myself, and by the time I shut off the torch and started hammering, it just cooled too much. As you can see, it's a pretty big piece you have to heat up. You have to get it cherry red, just pretty much this whole side, and you can only get the torch in here, because if you were to do it on this side, you'd be too close to these pipes. So you're heating from here, and which is the thickest part of the top of the cylinder. Anyway, torch on there. It's a Harris number 2 rosebud tip, and it was a good 15 minutes of constant heat before you get any movement of the pin. Of course, if you're not such a wimp as like I am, you may be able to hit it harder, not have to put it in so much heat. Anyway, now it's time to lift these out and get them off to be rebuilt. Show you a problem I just found with the legs. As I kind of pointed out before. Look here how the pin fits. It's just long enough so that it just sits on the inside of the holes in the leg. Now what's happened with this one, as you can see, it's bent out there a bit. Either that happened while I was hammering out the pin or pushing out the pin, or just from normal wear and tear. So if I were to take this pin out, it is now barely resting in there. That's all that captures this leg to the this inner leg that moves up and down with the stabilizer. So I'm going to heat it up and pound it back in. So after pounding this one straight, I noticed looking in that this one's all wallowed out in here. Close up. Right. It's all wallowed out. Short of cutting it out and welding in a new, like, bung or something, I'm gonna have to. I'm just gonna run a weld bead around here to build it up a bit. Here it is after a bit of grinding. Not perfect, but just give the pin something to grab onto versus how it started to wallow out, so I think that should be good enough. Here's the pins and the new wear pads. It's an example of what the old pin before was cleaned up, and the pin cleaned up, so it'll actually go back into the hydraulic cylinder. These are the new lower pads. These are the ones that you adjust. Here's the one that came out. These green ones here go on the leg. There's 4 of those that go at the top of the leg. These bottom ones go inside the leg on the machine at the lower, on the bottom. Then there's 2 of those. So these green ones go right in here on the leg. And so that's the set from our friends in India. And the whole set to do a leg was, I think, around $65 or $80 US, versus the price quoted me for just this one pad at the dealer was 157 Canadian. And then they wanted like $50 a piece for these wear pads. So India it is. So here it is cleaned up. These guys threads in there. You can see the threads are fairly well pitted there where they've been exposed. We'll walk around to the other side where I haven't cleaned them up yet. and you can see what they look like. It's a good example. There's lots of rust built up in there, especially in these threads back in here. Come on, focus. Back in here, where they're exposed to the elements all the time. Kind of a dumb design, because there's no way, well, you'd probably have to grease these threads all the time to keep the rust building up in there, if you can get in there to actually put any grease on them. So I've just taken some silicone here, put a couple dabs on before I install them. And I'll let that set overnight so they won't fall out on me when I'm trying to put them in, because they kind of fit a bit loose in here versus the factory ones, which have a nice tight fit. I'm just going to put a little dab of silicone here on all of them to hold them in. So I got the truck all set up with the crane to put the stabilizer legs back in, and my neighbor came over to see what I was doing and said, let's just lift them in. So with 2 people, it's not bad. You can see the that's kind of, and you can see the wear pads there, the inner leg. And then what we did is place this jack at the bottom, just at the corner, to catch the leg in case it came down too far. And what we had to do was, the leg came all the way down, and then it hung up on the two inner pads that are in here. And so that's what these pry bars were for. So we're able to just get in there and pry it away from those inner wear pads, and then it's pretty tight in there, so we had to hit it down with the hammer, but I'm sure that'll wear eventually. And my backhoe's been parked here so long, I'll show you the family that's moved in. So now I've got it fixed. I can't really move it. So just finishing up the job, putting on the feet and the lower wear pads, the adjustable ones. And the job is done. Feet are on, and the wire pads are in. It's nice to have this done. Now I just have to wait for the robins to hatch. One thing I did is added these grease fittings. I'm not sure why there weren't any from the factory, but there's a hole there. Well, there was never any grease fitting there on either side. So I just tapped it for a regular grease fitting, and that way hopefully these won't get seized in there like last time. go over the cost here. So to have the 2 hydraulic cylinders rebuilt, and they told me that the rods were bent, which seems totally plausible. So they had to make new rods, which was not cheap. And you can see there with tax just under $1,900 Canadian. And then another, I think it was $80 US a side. We'll call it $110 Canadian a side for the wear pads. So about total, we'll call it $2,100 for this job. And again, I had the hydraulic cylinders rebuilt by Hydrauli-Chrome here in Ottawa, because that's all they do. And that's that. So if you want to avoid a costly repair, make sure you get to those wear pads before you bend the rods in the stabilizer cylinders.
Wait, go over your guest speaker. We've got Mike next door cutting it down. For... What?
Checking on the progress.
He's been here for 50 years. He's known Greg from the very beginning. Unfortunately, he still comes around. Welcome,
yeah.
Mike. Welcome to the show.
And that's what happens when you have low maintenance on your vehicle.
Absolutely agree. Too much YouTubing.
Now this video is to show you what
not to do.
What the? Oh, Greg's got a new video. So glad I subscribed.